So number 1 talks about linear equations. So this was 4.1. How can I tell if an equation is a linear equation? Very nice. So the first thing that you have to recall is I can tell if something is linear if, number 1, I can write it in either standard form or y equals mx plus b. If there's no exponents above 1, so x is really x to the 1, so if it's quadratic, it would be power of 2. And the last way you could tell if an equation is linear, if there's no variables in the denominator. So as we look at this equation, we look at the equation y is equal to 1/2 x plus 1/4. Looking at it this way, I don't see it written in standard form, but I do see it written in mx plus b. Y equals m is 1/2, x plus b is 1/4. The highest exponent is 1, x to the 1, y to the 1. There's no variables in the denominator. So yes, this is linear. Once it's linear, what I need to try to figure out is to put it in standard form, which is ax plus by is equal to c. In order to put it in standard form, I have to remember that a cannot be a fraction, nor can it be negatives. B cannot be a fraction either. C, there's no stipulation. You could be any number, pretty much. So these are my, don't forget what I have to do in order to put something to be in standard form. I notice that the equation y is equal to 1/2 x plus 1/4 is not in standard form. The first thing that I'm going to do is bring over the 1/2 x to the left so that I have ax and by on the same side of the equation. There's more than one way to do this. You could immediately get rid of the fractions by destroying the denominator like we talked about at the very beginning of the year. More than one way to do it. I'm just going to show you this one way. If I subtracted 1/2 x and brought it to the left, I would be left with negative 1/2 x plus y, which is really 1y, is equal to 1/4.
Wouldn't it be y?
So since you want ax plus by, you want to have the term that has the x in front and the term that has the y second. But I still have not reached all of my things that you need to satisfy. I put it in ax plus by, however, a is a fraction and it's negative. So how do I get rid of that 1/2 and the negative all at once?
Times by -2/1.
Very nice. Multiply the entire equation by -2. When you multiply the entire equation by -2, this becomes +1. -2 times +y is -2y. And -2 times 1/4 is basically a fourth of -2. So you could think to yourself, 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So I get -1/2. And so my equation is 1x minus 2y is equal to -1/2. That is the ax plus by is equal to c format. Yes?
How did you get 1x? What is it?
So number 2, word problems. Oh no, that's okay. Just read it. So this question says, they give me an equation. They say the equation 8x plus 10y equals 80 represents x, the number of students, and y, the number of adults who can attend the play for $80. If no adults, okay, so if there's 0y, how many students can see the play? All they're asking you to do here is simply just put in no adults, which is the y. They want you to put in 0 for y and find out how many students. What is x value? That's all they're asking for. So if you have the equation, 8x plus 10y is equal to 80. And if there's 0 y's, that means 10 times 0 is 0. 8x equals 80, so x is 10. That means you can have 10 students when there's 0 adults. When x is 10, y is 0. That's all that they were asking us. Find the x and y intercepts of the graph of 2x minus minus 3y is equal to 6. Then graph. Well, what do I know about x-intercepts?
The y value is 0.
That's right. You know that your x-intercept is the value of x when y is equal to 0. So if I have the equation 2x minus 3y is equal to 6, in order to find out the x-intercept, I am going to plug 0 in for y. 2x minus 3 times 0 is equal to 6. 3 times 0 is 0, so 2x minus 0, which is just 2x, is equal to 6. Divide by 2, I get that x is equal to 3. What is the form that an intercept must be written in?
Y equals mx plus b.
As a point. An intercept is a point.
Oh.
Many of you guys got points taken off on your last summative because you forgot that the x-intercept is the actual point. That means that if x is 3, y is 0. That's my intercept. And then you could graph it by going over 3 of 0. The x-intercept is the value of x when y is 0, and your answer is written as a point. The y-intercept is therefore the other way around. The value of y when x is 0. So I plug 0 in for x, and I get 2 times 0, which is just 0, minus 3y equals 6. So that's just negative 3y is equal to 6. Divide by negative 3, and I get that y is equal to negative 2. So what is the y-intercept?
Negative 2.
How do I write intercepts?
0, negative.
0, comma, negative 2. And when I plot that, it's right here. Now I just connect the dots, and that's my line. Determine whether the function is linear. So once again, we're going to linearity. Well, it's not written in any form, so I can't check to see if it's in y equals mx plus b. I can't check to see if it's standard form. I can't check to see if there's any exponents. So what's the way that I could tell if a table's values are linear?
Constant rate of change.
Nice, constant rate of change. And please remember, constant rate of change is the same as slope. It's the change of y over the change of x. So many of you guys mistook y for x and x for y and wrote the wrong rate of change. In this case, the y's are down here, and here's the x's. So the change of y from 12 to 9 is you went up 3, and from 1 to 3 you went up 2. From 9 to 6 I went up 3, 3 to 5 I went up 2. And from 6 to 3, I went up 3, and 5 to 7, I went up 2. Oh, look, they're all the same. It's constant. Yes, because the constant rate of change is 3 over 2.
Constant rate of change. Crop.
Do you simplify the slope?
Yes, you should always simplify the slope, because if you would have gotten like 3 over 2, that's a great question. let's say that we got 3 over 2, 6 over 4, and then we got 12 over 8. You might look at it and go, oh, it's not the constant rate of change. But then when you simplify it, they all simplify to 3 over 2. So yes, it would still be constant.
You also simplify this.
So when we have slope and you have 2 points, you know that you're going to use a slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where the first point is x1, y1, x2, y2. Great. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Make sure you're careful with those double negatives. 10 minus 2 is 8. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. And 8 over 2 is 4. So you do simplify. 4 is really the same as 4 over 1. I'm always stressing the fact that it should stay a fraction because of rise over run. However, if it simplifies to a whole number, write it as a whole number.
Will you get points off if you don't write it as a whole number?
You will not get points off, but it's important for you to make sure you always write it as a whole number, that you definitely simplify it, because if you didn't simplify it, you would get some points off. Okay? The other thing is that please remember, there's a difference between 0 divided by a number and a number divided by 0. So if one of the questions gives you the answer of 0 divided by, or 0 over 7, you must write that the slope is 0. Because that's very different than if they gave you an answer of 7 over 0, which is undefined. So those are very, very important. Let's look at the bottom, number 6.
I think I messed this one up.
Let's see. So we've got 1 minus negative 3 over negative 5 minus 2. The double negatives become a plus. 1 plus 3 is 4. Negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. Now, slope is either positive or negative, so when you get 4 over negative 7, there's only one negative, so that means that the whole slope is negative, and it's negative 4 over 7.
Okay.
Let's look at the next one. y2, which is negative 5, minus y1 is also negative 5, over x2 minus x1 is negative 9. Double negatives both top and bottom. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. 6 plus 9 is 15. 0 divided by anything is equal to 0. Not to be confused
Why do you add the bottom?
with 15 divided by 0, which would be undefined.
Wait, why do you add the bottom?
6 plus 9
Yeah.
is 15.
I know, but
Just to make sure that I completed it. Once you see 0 in the numerator, you know the answer is 0.
no.
Nice. All right, so the slope of number 7 is 0. Please make sure you simplify 0 and undefined so I know that you know the difference between the two. What kind of a line is this guy? Horizontal or vertical?
What?
Great. Number 8, graph. Well, tell me, how do I graph any function if I am not given any beginning points?
I just graphed 3 over 5.
Right? You're looking at this. There's two different ways of doing this. So the most basic way of graphing any function, and when you guys get into geometry and algebra 2, ... when you are graphing any function, what you should do is make a table of values. That's the foolproof way. The foolproof way is you could either make a couple of x values, 0, 1, and then when you go to graph or when you go to plug in, you're going to notice, oh no, 3/5 times 1 is 3/5. What? I have to deal with fractions? Well, in order to not deal with fractions, if you want to graph by using a table of values, choose multiples of the denominator. Because that means you're going to divide it by 5, right? You're going to divide by 5 here. So I'm not going to choose 0, 1. I'm going to choose 5 and maybe negative 5. Because when I go to plug in, 3/5 times 0 is just 0, so I know I'm going to go to 0, 0. When I go to plug this guy in, it's 3/5 of 5. Well, 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 1 times 3 is just 3, so 5 comma 3 is a point. That would be right here. And then when I go to plug in -5, I'm going to get 3/5 times -5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. -1 times 3 is -3, so -5 comma -3, which is right here. Now I have the line that I can connect the dots to, and that's the graph. The other way of doing it is probably the quickest way, and I would love for you guys to be very comfortable with this. So if you know it's y equals mx plus b, that means that the b is plus 0. So then, yeah, you could begin at 0, 0. And then from there, go up 3 over 5. And then extend the line and connect the dots. So if you just started at 0, 0, you were lucky because you see that there's no b, but the b is 0 when it's not listed. So direct variation is one of those things that causes a lot of disturbance in our force. So I want you guys to just one more time listen to the definition of what direct variation is. Direct variation is another word for an equation where your y value varies, in other words, changes directly with x. When something is direct, it means it's straightforward. There's no extra stuff. That's kind of like the way I think of it when I think of y equals mx plus b, but you take away that extra b and you just get y equals mx. If there's no plus b, it can be considered a direct variation equation where k is what we call, instead of calling it slope, we call it the constant of variation. It is the thing that creates the change. And it makes sense if I know y varies directly with x, y is going to change depending on what x is. And it's going to change by this k.
What's that equation about?
If it's y equals 2x, it means that y is always twice x. If it's y equals 4x, it means y will always be whatever x is times 4. Now, if I use this as a literal equation and I transformed it and solved for k, I would divide x on both sides, and I would get that k is equal to y divided by x. What this does is just simply, if I want to know what k is equal to, but I am given what y and x is, I do y divided by x, and that's what k equals. So taking all of this into account,
But what if it's like a number, like y?
what we're going to do now, for example, here, it tells me y varies directly as x. That means that whatever y is, it's going to change based on what k is and what you did to x. Now, this part here is really important. We went from the equation y equals kx and we transformed it, kind of like literal equations, and we solved for k, and we got that k is equal to y over x. Every time you have a direct variation equation, your k is going to be whatever y is divided by x. So if we go back to this equation or this problem here, they tell me y varies directly with x. That means I know I'm dealing with a y equals kx equation. And then they don't give me the y equals kx equation. They're asking me for the equation. I know that the equation is going to be y equals something x. y equals kx. But I don't know what k is. I do know that if you wanted to get k, it's y divided by x. And I know that y is 8 and x is 6. So k is going to be 8/6, which is really 4/3. So if k is 4/3, then the equation is y equals 4/3 x. And again, how did I get that equation? Because I know it's a direct variation equation, which means it's a y equals kx equation. And I know that k is what I have to figure out. And how did I get k? They told me it varies, like when y is 8, x is 6. So if y is 8 and x is 6, and k is y divided by x, then that means that k is going to be y, which is 8, divided by x, which is 6, simplifies to 4/3. That means that k is 4/3, so my equation is y equals 4/3 x. Period, new sentence. Find y when x is 9. Oh, well, I already know because I figured out that y is equal to 4/3 x. I already know because I figured out that y is equal to 4/3 x. So that means that if they want to know what y is equal to when x is 9, I'm going to go y is equal to 4/3 times x, which is 9. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12. That means y is equal to 12 when x is equal to 9. So, just as a quick summary, when you're working with direct variation equations, the first thing you need to do is remember that y equals kx and that k is y divided by x. So that if they don't give you an equation, but they do give you y and x, you can figure out what k is and then put it in the y equals kx equation. So that if they also ask, okay, now that you know what the equation is, what is y when x is a certain value, you already know this is the equation that I have to plug in that x value for to get my new y value. Y varies directly as x, so as soon as I see those words, I know it's y equals kx, and what's k equal to? If y equals kx,
K is equal to y at x.
y divided by x, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as soon as you see the words y varies directly as x, you already know it's y equals kx, and you know k is y over x. And if you forget that k is y over x, you could literally transform the y equals kx, divide by x on both sides, and that's where you would get k is equal to y over x. Okay, so before I begin, I know that the equation needs to be y equals something x. If it helps you to write it with a block to fill in that you'll erase later, that's fine.
What if I got a decimal?
I know that k is y divided by x, and I know that y is 26 and x is 8. 26 divided by 8 simplifies, if I divide by 2, to the numerator and the denominator to 13/4. So I know that the k is really 13/4. So I can go ahead and replace that blank with 13/4. Now the next question, second part, find the value of x when y is 65. What do I do?
Just replacing 65.
Yeah, so let's do that. So y equals k times x. How do I solve for x? Divide by 13/4, which is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. Multiply by 4/13 to both sides. Correct? I get x is equal to 13 goes into 65 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20 over 1. So x is equal to 20. So I know slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. What does m stand for?
Slope.
Slope. What is b?
Y-intercept.
Nice. What is given to me right now in the equation?
You're given the y-intercept and the
What is the slope?
It's 3x.
3.
23.
So it's
What is the y-intercept?
-2.
So what's the equation?
Y equals 3 and x minus 2.
Nice. That's my equation.
Is this all?
To graph it, I'm going to go to the y-axis to -2. And from there, let me zoom this in. You're going to go to the y-axis to -2, which is right there. And your slope is 3, which means you go up 3, and the denominator's 1 to the right 1. Up 2, 3 to the right 1. 1, 2, 3 up, 1 to the right. Connect those dots. That is the line, that is the graph of the equation y equals 3x minus 2. Number 11 asks me also for an equation in y equals mx plus b. And they do give me the slope, so I know that the equation is going to be y equals, slope is 2, 2x, but I don't know what b is. What am I given in the question? A point and the slope. So you use the point slope formula. What is the point slope? Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Because I got the point that was given to me and I got the slope, that's the reason I use point slope. If you have a point and the slope, you use the point slope. So x1 is 3, y1 is 1. Y minus 1 is equal to m of 2 times x minus x1 is 3. That is the equation in point slope. But they want the equation in slope intercept.
Oh, I was going to say standard. I'm so good at it.
So we're going to distribute. You get y minus 1 is equal to 2x minus 6. Don't forget, you're distributing to everything. Add the 1, nice. Add the 1 to both sides.
Y equals 2x minus 5.
Very good. Y equals 2x minus 5. So y equals 2x minus 5 is the equation. I can then graph it either by using the y equals 2x minus 5 equation like there that you see it, beginning at -5, going up 2 over 1, or I could simply graph the point that they give me, 3, 1, and from that go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, connect the dots, and that's my equation. Your homework is to complete numbers 12 through 16. You are to complete numbers 12 through 16 tonight for homework, and we will review them tomorrow.